ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Retro Warriors episode 375. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
It kind of sounded like instead of welcome, you said workum.
Welcome to the show. I felt that, but I was like, I don't want to do another take.
Now just roll with it. Yeah, it's fine. Nobody noticed. It's fine.
Yeah. Pablo, go to a previous episode and clip out my welcome and paste it, put it over that welcome so that it sounds normal.
See if you can find one from an uncut where his voice really cracks.
Welcome. Do you want fries with that?
I have to ask my manager.
I don't know why that line gets me every fucking time.
I love it every time. I don't know why. Anyway.
As far as housekeeping.
Yes, sir.
This is, I've recorded tonight. After tonight, I will have recorded 5 shows in 7 days.
That happens.
Saturn will have recorded 4 shows in as many days.
Yeah.
And so to compensate for my vacation, we recorded the last session late.
Yeah.
And this session on time. So this is basically 4 episodes in a week on time. So if the pacing is weird or whatever, it's just kind of weird. Like we you know, it's not
sometimes
like
things are weird.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes things are weird, son. So that's why.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's what's going on.
I like that the beginning of this episode is coming off as really goofy when the end of the pre-show was really dark.
It was fucking dark as shit. And then we're like, whoa, welcome to the show. Entertain us, clowns. For any uncut listeners, which you can get if you subscribe to our Patreon, I'm sorry for the emotional whiplash. They're going to think we're psychotic. They're going to be like, these guys just changed gears on a dime.
In fairness, we're a little psychotic.
These people are insane.
Right?
My week, I'm having a moment with Dragon Quest XI.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
I saw it on the eShop, not the eShop, the Steam store. I saw it on Steam.
On Steam, yes. That's how we refer to that.
And I was like, man, I kind of want to have that to play on my deck. Mm-hmm. But then I don't want to start the game over. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got like 50 hours into the game, so I don't want to restart that.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it's also $40 for a game I already own and blah, 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 and it's whatever. And then TGS happens.
So you bought it.
And so it was on sale for $20 and I bought it just on a whim. And I was like, well, I'll just go download a save from the chapter that I'm in, you know?
Right.
And so I go and I do that and I'm like, and that'll basically put me close enough and I can kind of tweak things from there. Mm-hmm. The only problem is the save I downloaded, it has every single version of every single item. Mm-hmm. And 20 of them.
That's totally normal.
It's 290 pages, all the way full of 20 items per entry.
Yeah, now that you phrase it that way, I think the cheat engine table I have actually has that as an option, 20 of every item.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that, and I know it's going to sound so dumb, but that bothers me.
Well, if you need to rationalize it, the game does let you reset to any previously played chapter just by switching to 2D mode and then back to 3D mode. So there's a chance that somebody just beat the game, reset it back to the beginning, played through it again, reset it back to the beginning, and just kept
20
doing
times.
It. Exactly. I mean, that didn't happen, but that you could tell yourself that happened.
My issue is that, I don't really care to cheat at the game. It's not a terribly difficult game.
True.
And a lot of the enjoyment I get out of RPGs is me coming up with and finding and forging my equipment and putting my team together with my skills in the appropriate order. You know, the actual gameplay is enjoyable to me. And having literally 20 of every single item that exists in the game kind of removes a lot of that strategizing, because you can just literally go, well, I'm going to use the best everything all of the time forever. And it removes that little bit of chase, that little bit of like, oh, I'm in the next town. I need to go grind up and get some gear. And oh, I can't afford that helmet. Maybe I'll go do the dungeon, then I'll buy the helmet afterward. And, that whole kind of process.
Yeah, I can get that.
And so then I go back and I restart the game. And I'm like, that's 50 hours. Whatever. It's fine. It's fine.
Hey, I've played through it 4 times now. So
there you go.
Don't be asking me to justify that.
And I'm enjoying it. I think I'm forgetting how good of a time I had with Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah.
Because playing back through it, I'm like, man, what a good game. And then I was just kind of sitting there playing it, and I was like, it's kind of a bummer. It's a port of the Switch version, so it doesn't use any of the like PS4 and original PC release assets that look nicer.
Right.
And so then I go down the rabbit hole of modding Dragon Quest XI S Definitive Edition on my Steam Deck.
To make it a properly definitive edition?
Yes, which I got there. It is now a properly... It's actually, I had to make it a little less definitive because it got so hard to run on the deck.
Nice.
But I've modded in all of the assets, the world assets, NPCs, equipment, player characters, all with the original assets from the original PC release. And let me tell you, modding that game, so easy.
Well, it's just Unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Unreal. So you just download a pack file and stick it in a folder. That's it. You've modded it. It's done.
Yeah.
I've got some reworked engine stuff. The only thing I didn't take is there is a redone lighting engine that looks very nice, but it looks a little too nice, if that makes sense. Like it's a little too like every light source is now like dazzling and magnificent.
That might be how the lighting was in the original PS4 and PC release.
Well, then it fit. So
I remember it being a little weird.
And so yeah. So I modded the animations so that certain animations that look kind of choppy are a little smoother, and I've got it running at a solid rock solid 40 FPS, except for like big open field sections. They run like mid 30s.
That's still not bad.
And
it's still way better than the Switch.
Yeah, it's great. And I go through all this process, and I'm like, am I just being an asshole here? Like, I could just take my Switch out and play the game on my Switch, not lose any progress, pick up right where I was.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? And I picked the Switch version up after sitting there playing the deck version, because I'm telling myself, I'm like, how much better can it look?
Right.
And I load up the Switch version, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm actually shocked that I sat through 50 hours of it looking like that. I was like, this is bad looking.
Well, it's still a good looking game. It's just... it's not super pretty, but the art style carries it.
I don't know. I don't know if it's because I was coming straight from a heavily modded on my deck, and the deck has a much nicer screen. It's a much bigger screen, and so I think just coming from that and going, well, let me just go boot it up and look. I booted it up one time, and then I was like, nope, closed it, took it out, put it back on the shelf. I was like, I'll put 50 hours in and not have to look at that.
So what you're saying is you should just play the 2D version.
I started the 2D version, and I was like, no, I miss it. I miss that 3D version. It's so cool looking.
Yeah, also the encounter rate on the 2D version is garbage.
That's what I hear.
It's just trash.
That's what I hear. I'm trying to kind of get back in the swing of Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah.
And just, what a good game. Just so good.
Oh, yeah.
I remember the beginning being slower than it is, and I think what it was is I was conflating the demo with the first hour of the game.
Right.
Because really, about the first, so when the game starts, it's kind of slow, and then it gets exciting pretty quick, and then it kind of steps back from the excitement and slows things down again, and then gears back up into it, which is kind of the Dragon Quest, general design idea anyway, of these like highs and lows real fast.
Yeah.
But the demo is just dreadfully boring.
Well, the demo is the first part of the game up until you recruit your third and fourth characters.
Is it? I remember the demo being so much more boring.
That's literally the same.
I don't know what I'm thinking then. And obviously,
maybe you got distracted by things the first time you played it, and
possibly,
and just didn't get to the excitement.
Also, been playing the new Paw Patrol game on Game Pass.
Oh, you didn't play it on Stadia?
No, been playing it with my daughter.
I heard
and
it was released on Stadia, and Stadia fans are very upset about it.
Why? It's a good game.
Because it's like the only game they got this month, and
It's pretty fun.
They were told that there was going to be 100 new games on Stadia this year.
Yeah.
And it's already the middle of September, and they're only at 48, and one of them is Paw Patrol.
Yeah, well, wait until December when they just port over like 98 Android games and call it fucking done.
Right.
You got cut the rope. Fuck off. I was playing with my daughter. It plays very much like kind of the Lego games, except much simpler and easier. And as far as I can tell, literally no enemies in the game.
That's not bad.
So, yeah, but it's fun playing that with her. She's been kind of getting into playing the video games lately, and I've been trying to foster that without being that parent that's like, well, you gotta be a gamer.
You got to get good.
Yeah, or the people that are like, well, you got to start on the NES like I did, and then I'll work you up to the good systems.
Right.
It's like, no, just let them play what they think looks fun. Like, just
I didn't have to start watching films with silent movies in order to enjoy current film.
Yeah, they weren't like, okay, first up, the Great Train Escape or whatever, and then we'll work you up.
Yeah. Someday we'll get to weird science.
It's one of these days.
Yeah.
Look, son, I know you love Oingo Boingo.
Who doesn't?
What have you been doing?
Not much, honestly. It's been a busy week at work. I'm still getting used to things with my cat. I've figured out her 3 moods now are asleep, hungry, which is the only time she's cuddly is when she's hungry,
right?
And complete psychopath. That's her 3 moods.
That sounds correct.
It's been a very, very long time since I've had a cat this young.
Yeah.
And so
because she's 2, right?
Yeah, she's 2 years old. So
yeah, they don't really chill out till 8 or 9.
Yeah, she is 100% energy anytime she's awake if she is not hungry, and so she will sprint back and forth across the place. And when they sent me home with a bunch of toys for her, and I was like, what is this? Cats don't like toys. What do you do? You give a cat a toy, it's going to ignore it and go for a paper bag that it can sleep in. No, she loves every single one of these. Like half of them were just pipe cleaners that they had curled up. Those are her favorites. She will juggle those things up in the air and is very excited by them. And she also thinks that the reward for me petting her is biting me. So I'm trying to. I'm just still adjusting to all of that. It's a lot.
It's very rewarding having an animal that enjoys toys. Like both my dogs, I've never had dogs like this. They fucking love toys. You come home with new dog toys and they can like smell it in the bag and they come rushing over and they have a toy box, and every day I have to pick their damn toys up that are everywhere and put them in there, and they will go rummage through the box.
Yeah.
Like move things around to get to the shit that they're after in it. It's very rewarding, rather than when you go spend $40 on a pet bed and you lay down and your pet looks at you like you're an idiot.
Right. Yeah,
so that's nice.
My dogs, when I was growing up, did not care for any toys that we purchased. Their favorite toys were either tennis balls, which I think all dogs love tennis balls, and also my dad's old socks. They loved those socks. We would just tie them in a knot and give it to the dog, and it was their new favorite thing.
Yeah. Let's do the news.
Okay.
If I have to. Okay, bear. First up, Blizzard removes third-party orb purchases from Diablo Immortal, leaving some players with an in-game balance of negative $100,000. I don't even know what this sentence means, but it sounds stupid.
So basically, previously you could buy the game's in-game currency through external sources, through third-party stores or whatever, and then redeem them in the game. And they discovered that some people were paying less than sticker price for them through these third-party sources.
Oh no, you mean literally how third parties fucking work?
Yeah. So they undid those purchases and put those people's accounts in a negative balance. So if they tried to buy any more orbs, they would have to buy $100,000 worth to even get one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
How nice of them to do that.
Yeah. So those people all collectively decided, well, the correct answer is just to delete this account and start over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sometimes I know we go through this all the time, and I shouldn't be shocked, but sometimes it's fascinating how bad these major multi-billion-dollar corporations are running their own stuff. No one is making them run it this way. They're waking up in the morning going, let's fuck people today. Like, that's their decision that they made.
Yeah.
And then they went into the office and they told all the other executives, like, hey, we're going to fuck people. And they all went, oh, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, we can fuck people. I'll get Tom on that. And we'll just fuck all these people.
You know our most dedicated customers, the ones that'll jump through like 80 hoops just to play our game in the most efficient manner?
Yeah,
Let's really fuck those people.
The ones you made fun of on stage about this game.
Yeah, those are the people.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. We got a team for that. We'll get them on that. Well, yeah, it'd be good.
You know, I think Bob from accounting likes fucking people. Let's see if we can get him in on this.
I don't know. I imagine there's like people in the hallway listening in and popping their heads in like, I like fucking people.
Hey, did you say somebody was getting fucked today?
We fucking people today?
I'll order pizza. Have a fuck party.
A fuck party. So stop calling your birthday party that.
Look,
no one wants to come.
If I keep saying it, someday it'll be true.
Kunio and Double Dragon creator Matsuhiro Yoshida has passed away at age 61.
So
that's
young.
pretty young, man.
Yeah.
That's not.
That's rough.
Not very old at all. That sucks.
Yeah.
Because I love Kunio.
Right.
And Double Dragon exists. So,
It is a game.
Fans managed to get Halo Infinite's canceled split-screen co-op to work via an exploit on Xbox One. Because fuck you, Microsoft, and fuck you, 343i. Fuck you.
I think it's been patched out now.
Oh my. So let me get this straight. Microsoft and 343 collectively promise a feature in a game that they release unfinished.
Correct, yeah.
Very obviously unfinished, missing major features. And then they go, hey, actually, we're going to keep working on this free-to-play stuff and not give you those features.
Right.
And then the fans go, well, that's okay. We can make it work on our own. And they say, no. We're not going to let you.
Yeah, basically that.
What the fuck is happening?
But not before, I think, Digital Foundry did a video on how well it ran. And it apparently ran pretty well.
Fucking assholes.
Yeah.
Mega Drive 2 Mini confirmed for European release. Also an Amazon exclusive. Now, is it shipping from Japan just like the American version?
I think so. I didn't check Amazon UK to confirm, but I believe so.
Okay, so it really is just the same release.
Just with a different packaging to say Mega Drive instead of Genesis.
Yeah, they've just listed it in more places.
Right. Well, it's different packaging, different print on the box because it does say the unit itself says Mega Drive. It has the screen print that says Mega Drive. So that much is different.
Ship it to Amazon Europe and let them distribute it.
Well, why not send the Genesis one to Amazon US and let them distribute it?
Exactly. Yeah. Why not? This whole thing is so weird.
Yeah, my pet theory, which I think I said last time we talked about this, is still that their deal with Retrobit prevents them from selling the 6-button controller out of these countries. That's my theory.
I don't know. Like, Retrobit is such a small company compared to Sega Sammy that I could just imagine Sega being like, nah, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to do about it? Mitchell Watch. Technical analysis confirms Donkey Kong video submitted by Billy Mitchell was created using MAME and not original hardware.
What?
What? I hope that Pablo is able to resurrect the Billy Mitchell Watch music because we've waited a long time for proof of the fact we all already knew. What is this?
For basic verification of previously known knowledge.
And here's the thing, is the people that review this kind of shit, they know what they're talking about.
Right. Like, did you look at the frame by frame they showed?
Oh, I looked at a bunch of it, and it's pretty damning.
Yeah, it's super obvious, too.
So now Billy Mitchell has pivoted.
Yeah.
He's now saying that a doctor won't see him due to his cheating accusations.
Yeah, he is so harmed by these, quote, false cheating accusations that now he can't even get to see his doctor.
Now, on the one hand, if his doctor did deny him service because of that does suck.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's not how a doctor should do, but...
But also, when you're the kind of person like Billy, and I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to make an assumption about Billy. I'm going to assume that Billy completely lives and dies by his identity as Hot Sauceman and world record holder a long time ago.
I believe that, yeah.
And whenever you meet someone...
Doesn't he still hold the Pac-Man record, though?
I don't know. I can't imagine he's first place if he's...
I know if nothing else, he was the first to hit a perfect score in Pac-Man. So he'll always be that.
And I think that's why because he doesn't talk about Donkey Kong anymore. Everything's Pac-Man. He's real into the Pac-Man shit.
Yeah.
And I think it's because you can't take away that particular achievement by people being better than him, which lots of people are.
Yes. It literally life, not just games.
Yeah. And so... on the one hand, if your doctor refused you service for that sucks. But also, when you're the kind of guy that lives and dies by this shit, you never shut the fuck up about it. And then when people hear this stuff, they're like, man, you're just nuts. I don't want anything to do with you.
Right.
I don't know.
I hear you.
It is. I think we're less than a decade away from crazy old grandpa Billy Mitchell. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I can tell you this. It's going to be very sad.
Here's my prediction. He manages to accidentally hit the wrong pedal in his car and he runs someone over. That's my prediction about Billy
Jesus
Mitchell.
Christ! It's fucking dark as shit.
Oh, shit. Sorry, the pre-show's over. No more dark.
Oh, my God. So, yeah, I mean, we all knew it. Now, it's just Billy. Let it go, man. I want to extend an olive branch to Billy Mitchell.
Do you?
I mean, no, but you can be a human being and just be like, yeah, I used to be a world record holder. Yeah, I used to be real good at that stuff. I'd love to talk about what it was like back in the day. I don't need to be this persona anymore.
Yeah. I think if he shifted his persona to, I was a guy who did this, let me encourage the new generation, I think people would appreciate that. But instead, he is desperately trying to cling on to that moment that he had.
He's that like professional wrestler that won't retire, and you're like, Hulk Hogan, stop! Please stop wrestling. You look terrible. Stop.
Your face has melted years ago.
When you take your shirt off, you have the little old man boobies. Please stop. You're done, dude. You're done.
Poor old man boobies.
I think he's been done now for a long time. But there was a moment there where everyone was like, "Oh, dude, no, put it back on, and please, but you retire. You've earned it. Right. You've earned it." Yeah. VM2, a fan-made VMU replacement that we previously discussed, is now available on Indiegogo for $115.
Yep.
And it looks pretty cool. I don't know if it looks $115 cool.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that. It does look really neat because it's got the backlight, it's got the rechargeable battery, it'll charge off of the Dreamcast controller itself. And my favorite feature, you can disable the beep even if its battery is dead.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't play much Dreamcast. If I did, easy purchase for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. CD Projekt announced that the expansion to Cyberpunk 2077 will not be coming to last-gen consoles, and owners of the limited edition Cyberpunk-themed Xbox One X that were promised the game and expansion will be, quote, reimbursed in some other way.
Why is it that every story about Cyberpunk comes off as frustrating?
It's reaching a point where it's like, because when it came out, I remember being like, hey, I liked Cyberpunk. I had a fun time with it. Mm-hmm. It felt like a trick. The first 5 hours are awesome. And then all of a sudden it just like dumps you into this other game that's glitchy and has problems. And I maintained at the time that, hey, if they can fix these problems, because obviously they really honed these first 5 hours to make sure you were past the return window and make sure reviewers had their time with it.
Right.
If they can fix the stuff after that, this is a really good game.
And I've since heard that some of that has been fixed and that the expansion is reviewing very well.
Yes.
And
so it's like they can't just stop fucking it up.
Like,
I mean, if
we're getting too much good press.
If last-gen consoles can run the game, why would they not be able to run the expansion?
Oh, we just need to ask Square Enix. If last-gen consoles can run Final Fantasy VII Remake, why can't it run the expansion?
You don't understand the PlayStation 5. You got to buy the PlayStation 5.
I did.
Or a PC, apparently.
Yeah, or a mediocre PC.
Japanese retailer Beep Shop, which is the best name ever for a retailer, Beep Shop is taking pre-orders for a reissue of the PC-88 version of Ys 3, available on 3.5 and 5.25 floppy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how any of us are going to play that.
Yeah, I know. Nobody has a PC-88.
But how cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's not neat enough that I'm going to buy it, especially since that's one of the worst games in the series. But... it's still neat.
Yeah.
I'm glad that things like this are happening, and I hope things like this continue to happen.
Yes. G4 has laid off at least 15 staff members with no notice or explanation. What year is it?
So G4 was revived a year and change ago.
As a garbage YouTube channel.
No, as a television channel.
Oh, yeah, I think you told me that, and I laughed.
Yeah, and so the son of the president of Comcast was really passionate about G4, really liked the channel, wanted to start it back up. I think it was the president of Comcast. Some executive from Comcast. Their son was a big fan of the original G4, wanted to bring it back, convinced them to restart the network, brought back a lot of the original on-air staff, on-air personalities, restarted Attack of the Show and some of these other programs. And apparently it's doing so poorly that a lot of the cable and satellite operators don't want to keep carrying it anymore.
You're telling me that in the era of smartphones, people don't want a television channel about gaming?
It's almost as if a TV channel about video games struggles to compete with Twitch.
But where else could you watch things about video games, Saturn?
I don't know. I think XPlay is back on it too.
Oh my God! Did they
Adam
get
Sessler's back?
No,
I don't know if they got Morgan Webb back.
Morgan Webb. Adam Sessler came back to do XPlay.
I believe so. I believe that's what I read. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure I read that he came back for the new season.
Now I gotta see because he's gotten even better in old age. Hyperkin announced the Retron GX, which plays PCE and TG16 Hue cards and turbo chips. No word on if it's emulation or not, but spoiler, it's going to be emulation. That's kind of what Hyperkin does. It's not anybody who's out there hoping that for FPGA, not what they do.
Right.
As far as I know, they've not done anything FPGA, have they?
No, not FPGA, but they have done clone consoles that weren't emulation before. Like
That's true.
The old Retrons for NES.
Yeah, the NES one.
And there were some Super NES and Genesis style Retrons that were just really poorly made clone consoles.
Yeah.
So
we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And finally, after 30 years, Wolfenstein 3D has finally been unbanned in Germany and officially released.
Congratulations, Germany. You can finally play Wolfenstein 3D.
Enjoy murdering all them Nazis.
Now, previously, they could kind of play it, but in the form of Super Noah's Ark 3D. Which is, as we know, the same game, but it looks different.
That's like saying, no, you can't have a candy bar, but I've molded this dog turd to look like a Snickers.
Well, Super Noah's Ark actually uses the Wolfenstein engine.
No, I know. I've played Super Noah's Ark, and I know what I'm saying.
Right. Now, I believe as part of this announcement, as part of releasing Wolf 3D in Germany, they also added Spear of Destiny to everyone's library that owned the game on Steam. I think I read that.
Oh, that's cool.
So if you own Wolf 3D on Steam, now you also have its expansion.
I can still greatly enjoy the original Doom, but I cannot enjoy Wolfenstein 3D. I find it very boring.
Yeah, it is pretty dry.
I don't know what the difference is.
So more or less dry than, say, Super Noah's Ark 3D.
Well, if this is the analogy we're using, Super Noah's Ark 3D is like chewing sand. That's how dry that is. It's like a sand and saltine cracker smoothie.
But think of all the animals you can rescue.
I don't want to rescue them.
But Justin, there's a flood coming.
I want to shoot Nazis. It's what I signed up for.
What if we could just leave the Nazis for the flood?
Don't pick any of them up.
Tell them to leave them behind.
You sure? Yeah, no, we're good. We're telling them there's no room. The boat's huge, though.
I filled it up with sheep. Sorry.
Yeah, lots of sheep.
No more room for you, Mr. Nazi.
That brings us to the topic at hand, which is title. We didn't put a
We're off to a brilliant start today.
This week we are talking about collectors, investors, and scalpers.
All the ers of video games.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about this because I just want to address, like, are they really that bad? Mm-hmm. What is their purpose in the market if they have one? What is the appropriate amount to pick on or make fun of them? Because I do feel like there's a lot of vitriol going around.
Right.
And I'm not saying a lot of it isn't deserved.
Sure.
But I'm saying that maybe a lot of it is not appreciating the complete picture.
And also it depends on what part of the conversation you're looking at. Because if you go to niche enough communities on the internet, you're going to find defenders of all these things just as much as you'll find people who attack these things.
Yeah. So just as kind of like initial thoughts of where this sprang from. In the great before times, retro gaming was the cheap hobby. Mm-hmm. It was the thing you did because you couldn't afford modern games.
Right. So you'd go out and buy some NES or some Atari games or Genesis games or whatever.
It's like retro gaming then was the equivalent of going out and buying 360 games now, which basically are free right now. Right. For people that wonder what NES and SNES was like in the early 2000s, the shit was pretty much free.
Yeah. Not all 360 games are that cheap, though.
True. But a lot.
I found out, I guess this is original Xbox, not 360, but the Platinum Hits reissue of NBA Ballers is apparently like $1,000 for some reason.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, like, yeah, there were always $high games that were collectible for whatever weird reason. You know, it was a retailer exclusive. You know, Final Fight Guy is a great example. Yeah. It was a thing that didn't sell and then was destroyed. But for the most part, it used to be you could walk into any store that carried old games and walk out with a big bag full of games for pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And every day that we strafe...
Well, it depends on what your taste level was. Because if you were just looking for JRPGs, you were not getting away for cheap at any point.
Well, you were getting away for cheaper than they are now, still.
Yeah, true, yeah.
And so every day that we get a little farther from that reality, because now it seems to be becoming the case that the second a system goes out the door, people are scrambling to figure out what is and isn't going to be collectible on that system. The Wii U is a great example.
Wii U and Vita,
let me tell you,
are both pretty big for that.
I love the Wii U and Vita. I love them. They're not collectible. Stop it. They didn't fucking sell for shit. They tanked hard. Right. Everyone hated them. I love the systems. Two of my favorite systems. But please stop. Please stop it.
Right.
They languished on shelves forever. Mm-hmm. And then the second they go out, the 3DS too. Yeah. The second the 3DS goes out, there's a collectible market for it. And I'm like, you guys, it is the 3DS games have to be some of the most over fucking produced, overprinted games of all time.
Yeah, not to say there aren't rare games on the system.
True,
but
they're not. They're not Mario 3D Land.
Right.
They're not Link Between Worlds.
Seriously,
everyone take a breath.
And so many of those games are so easily pirated too that it makes no sense to me how much a lot of Vita and 3DS games cost.
Yes, so it does seem that I think the PS3, Wii, 360 generation was probably the last generation that will really kind of go that way that like the PS2 did, where by the time you're hitting the 2010s, you can't give away PS2 games aside from the weird rarities. It seems that now the second something is off the market, it's where's the collectibles? We need to scoop this all up. Everyone panic purchase everything. Everyone drive prices up.
I don't know if we'll see that as much with the PS4 and Xbox One.
I'm curious to see.
Just because, one, they're backwards compatible, so they still feel current. And two, so many of those games were so overproduced that I question how that's going to happen.
I would say that it is just distinctly different. Whenever your successor console is pretty much largely compatible with your previous console, it does kind of change things a little bit.
Yeah.
So all that aside, I want to start by talking about flippers or scalpers or whatever you want to call them, because they seem to get the worst of the hate most of the time.
For good reason.
Yes. And I do think a lot of it is because you were going to buy a thing and you couldn't because this guy wants too much money for it.
Right.
And it makes it not only frustrating, but frustrating in your personal life.
Right. And
your life.
It's buying an item that should have been available and only making it available if you're willing to pay extra.
Yeah. I mean, most people are not interacting with collectors or investors on a I want to buy a thing from you scale regularly.
Right.
We all do interact with flippers regularly.
Unfortunately.
So let's first lay the groundwork of why this exists.
Yes.
Because the thing about flipping is that it only exists if there are people willing to pay the prices being asked.
Yep.
If 90% of people are not willing to pay the inflated price, the price will adjust. And I know people don't believe this, because what they do is they do this. They go, well, I'll go look up an NES Classic on eBay right now, which granted that is out of production. Pick something in production. I'll go look up a Legend of Zelda Game & Watch on eBay right now. Look, here's a guy selling it for $10,000. There's always going to be that.
Right.
But if you track the prices from when something releases that is very flippable, then you can see the price spike and then drift down and stabilize.
Yeah.
And I watch it happen all the time, in real time. You can save a search on eBay, check it every day, pick something. Whenever they come out with the next, the Pokemon Limited Edition Switch Pro.
Right.
Just watch it. Save an eBay search for it. Watch when it comes out and track it. It'll get crazy high, and then it'll go down. It'll hit a valley, and then it'll start curving back up. That's how this works, right? And the thing is, the trick about flipping is that what they're doing is they're taking a good that is only locally or regionally available as like an in-store only item. You got to get it from this Target in-store pickup.
Or something that is a brand new release and they are using some sort of bot or something to snipe it as soon as it's made available for sale online.
Yes. So what they're taking it from an area where it's hard to get. Either you have to be near this Target or near this Best Buy. You need to be on the computer at 2:00 in the morning hoping you get one, whatever. And they're offering it to a broader market, eBay. And this is a market that otherwise it would not be available on.
Right.
And I do want to, I'm not defending anyone here, but I want to mention that the work required to go out, find the good, run the bot, get it, list it, and ship it is a non-zero sum.
True.
It does take some effort and time, because I feel like I'm the only person that has probably done this, but I've had lengthy conversations with flippers on eBay.
Yeah.
I find someone with the thing I want, and I just talk to them. I just send them a message. Hey, why do you want so much money for this?
I used to live with a dude who flipped things for basically a living.
And as much as we want to vilify them, a lot of them are just trying to make a buck, and a lot of them are willing to sell something for a reasonable price. Like I was talking to a guy, and he was like, hey, look, I had to go out to Target. I had to wait in line. I had to buy this fucking thing. Like, that's worth something to me.
Right.
You didn't have to go do that. You're just going on eBay,
right.
So my point is that flipping does serve a purpose in the market.
True.
The problem is when it's done on like an industrial scale, like with a PS5, it reaches these asinine levels.
Yeah.
But again,
they get to the point to where if few enough people control enough of the inventory, they only need 10% of the market to pay that exorbitant price, even if the other 90% won't, because then they can show, well, all the sold listings were at that price, and we're just going to hold on to our stock because it's not out there.
You're still playing a time game, right? Because that 10% is going to saturate the people that are willing to pay it, and then you're going to be sitting on inventory, and that's losing money.
Right. If you look at a long enough scale, obviously it's going to happen. But
up front, it's very frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
It's very frustrating. But I feel like the real problem is this. It is exacerbated by companies like Nintendo and that seem to be specifically making products for flippers.
Yeah. You mean it's not normal to have a game arbitrarily go off sale after 8 months?
No. And it's just, I know Sony and Nintendo can, I was going to say Microsoft, but they actually seem to be doing pretty good on this front. They seem to be making an effort. I can just go on Amazon and buy an Xbox Series S right now.
You can go to Target and get one there at the store.
And so it feels like the companies are leaning into this.
Yeah.
Nintendo did it hard with Amiibo. If anyone doesn't remember the fucking Amiibo craze,
Yeah.
they went hard on it.
Yeah. I went to Target the other day. They had Series S on the shelf. They had all 3 models of Switch on the shelf, and they even had new Amiibo there. I don't know if Nintendo got sick and accidentally printed things, but it looked like they actually had stock.
The thing is, you know, whenever you can walk into a store, buy something, and then immediately sell it for more money, people are going to do that. Yeah, you're going to get assholes that are running bot networks and trying to make a living off of this. It's going to happen. But
even the people who are collectors, who buy the things just to keep for themselves, you hear those people that claim to be above it and claim to hate the people who flip things. If they're at a thrift store or a flea market or something, and they see a copy of Stadium Events or something ludicrous for $4,
sell it,
they're like, oh, I'm going to put that on eBay. Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, we're all flippers.
Right.
We just haven't all seen the deal.
Right.
When money's on the table, everyone's singing a different tune.
Right.
So I think the real villains here are the industrial level flippers.
Yes.
And the corporations. It's the Nintendos of the world that are making... Nintendo could print a bajillion copies of that special Fire Emblem edition thing of the NES version of the game that came out. They could print it into oblivion.
Yeah.
They could just print to market saturation.
Yeah. Well,
they could just do a second print run with pre-orders on a website that doesn't crash the second you open it. They could do this. They choose not to.
But if they did, then people wouldn't want it as bad, and it might not immediately sell out.
Because what they're doing is they are acknowledging the secondary market, which, and you see this all the time, especially in the collectible market. Companies pretend that they don't know about the secondary market. They're like, well, we don't know what happens after leaves our warehouse.
Right.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You do, and your activity is proving to us that you do.
Right.
Let's talk about the actual market.
There's an actual market?
Is there an actual impact on the retro gaming market from flippers?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's the answer is of course, but also it's kind of impossible to actually quantify.
Right.
Most companies, we don't have print numbers for these games. And even if we did have print numbers, we would need really in-depth retailer data and customer surveys to even get like a reasonable estimate.
Right. Yeah, there are games we have print data for. And there are experiments that have been performed. Like that one dude that bought every copy of
all
whatever.
Of the Silent Service?
The Silent Service. That was it. I was trying to remember what shitty game it was. That dude that bought all of Silent Service.
Yeah.
And just hiked up the price on his own. So there are... scenarios. There are studies that have been performed to see what the impact is, and there is an impact. There is an impact trail that you can follow. But as far as the grand, especially when you're looking specifically at retro gaming, I don't know if it's making as big of an impact as people think it is.
I think everyone feels like it is because flipping is a thing that happens to you.
Right. I feel like the flipping and the scalping affects the current market more than it affects the retro market.
I would say that is definitely true.
Yeah.
For sure. There's also instances where it can actually lead to things remaining available on the aftermarket when they'd otherwise be removed or destroyed.
Right.
Like a lot of times when you see games in the clearance bin, when you see that Balan Wonderland in the clearance bin, if it doesn't sell after a year or two, there's a high probability that it's just going to get destroyed and recycled.
Yeah, that's on its way to the landfill is what's going to happen. Just like all those TurboGrafx and Turbo Duo games late in the system's life that got literally steamrolled. I mean, those games don't exist anymore because no one bought them at clearance prices.
So people out here who are showing up to a store, they're saying, hey, here's a big bin of clearanced out Earthbounds. Nobody bought this fucking thing. It's $5 a pop.
Right.
I guess I'll buy a bunch. And weren't a bunch of Earthbounds destroyed? I mean...
Oh, yeah, sure. And they ended up at retailers until they sold for way under what the retailers paid for them.
Yeah.
So, that definitely...
So people walking into a store with the intent to like, hey man, this is like a big box Super Nintendo game. They only want $5. I don't know what it actually, what it clearanced out for, but basically free.
$5, give or take.
Yeah. I'll buy like 10 of these and then maybe someone will want them in a little, that I would say in the long run was a net positive because those remained in the market,
Yeah.
Because if people like that weren't doing that, the only ones we would have were people that earnestly bought the game when it was out, which apparently those numbers are pretty small.
There was like 8 of us. we exist.
I think the best way to combat rampant flipping of goods is to simply produce enough to meet demand. I know that the market is fickle and difficult to quantify, but they can do it.
Right, but now there is, now that I work in a company that deals with supply chain all the time, I get to see some of the back end of this, and it makes me understand a little bit more of it than I used to. Mm-hmm. And it can be difficult to quantify this stuff from the supply chain end, because you have to produce a lot of this stuff so far in advance of when it goes available for sale.
Oh, yeah.
And you may not know what the demand is going to be. And maybe you underprint it by a lot. And if you do, maybe there's still enough demand for a second run. Maybe there's not. And you have to ask yourself, and that can end up driving up prices. But worse is if you overprint, because then you just spend a bunch of money you cannot get back.
Yeah, and then you lost the cash.
Right, and that really discourages companies. So they always want to underprint a little, not too much, because they don't want to be that game that's sitting on the shelf collecting dust and becoming bargain bin fodder.
I mean, obviously, in Magical Christmas Land, you ideally want to sell exactly the amount of copies that you printed, and exactly that many people wanted it.
Oh, that's LRG's model.
But I feel like some of these companies are intentionally undercutting that number.
Yeah,
to create this fervor.
Nintendo is doing that.
Yeah.
It is frustrating to see how they are doing that specifically. As many complaints as I have about companies like LRG, and I could go an entire episode complaining about LRG today. However, one thing I do appreciate about what they do is when they do the open pre-order windows.
Yes.
Where they are basically saying anyone who orders in this period of time will get a copy of this game. Mm-hmm. And that helps them gauge how many they are going to order. And they have to order in specific batches. They can't just say, 12,093 people ordered, I want this many copies.
Right. They would need to order 15,000.
Exactly. So they're going to have some leftovers that they sell at conventions or at their new fucking bullshit store or whatever. So there are going to be
Come on down to the LRG bullshit store.
Right? Fucking LRG. Anyway, so they're going to have some spare copies, and that happens. That's the cost of doing the business that way.
Yeah.
But I personally think that it is more consumer friendly than the alternative, which is to print 8 copies and hope those people really like it, or just print 100,000 copies and hope you find 100,000 people who will buy it. So I do appreciate how they are doing that specific thing right now. That is the nicest thing I've said about LRG in a while. So I hope they are listening and they appreciate it.
I do want to say this. The next time you see someone selling some game on eBay for some asinine price, don't just assume that they're a dirtbag.
They might be.
They might be, but you know what? If you send them a message and just chat with them, a lot of the times these people are like, look, I see other people listening for like $10,000. Like, I don't know, man. I'm just trying to get as much as I can because I got bills to pay. Like,
however, if they say the phrase, I know what I have, just discontinue the conversation.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Just fuck them.
Yeah.
No lowballs. I know what I have.
Yeah,
it's Saturn. I know what I have. Let's talk about collectors.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Which is
that's me.
A relatively new pain point in the retro gaming scene. I feel like.
Yep.
It's the idea that collectors are snatching up all the good games and deals based on value rather than the idea that they want to own and play them. Yeah. And I think it's really easy to go down this mental road. But it's also important to remember that the vast majority of games they're buying are still readily emulated.
Yes.
Someone getting that copy of Earthbound for cheap doesn't mean that you can't play Earthbound.
Correct.
Is it bullshit that they put it in an acrylic case?
Yes,
sure.
It is super bullshit.
But you know what? That also means in 20 years, when every other copy is disintegrated, then theirs will be on the market still. Yeah. It will still exist.
Oh, I wonder if they wrap it in acrylic like that hot dog.
I can only hope. I do think a lot of this has to do with just being frustrated that collectors are usually very on top of deals and sales for these games. They use Gixin. They use other types of bots.
I don't know what Gixin is, but
Gixin is a sniping program. I use Gixin.
Oh.
So you go to Gixin, Gixen. We had a whole thing with the PSP episode where I didn't spell any of the shit I was talking about, and everyone was confused.
I saw that. That was great.
Multiple games. I was like, shit, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about it. You go to Gixin, you find an eBay listing you like, and you put in your top dollar, and it bids in the last single second. And what I use it for is to not look at the auction, because if I'm looking at it, I'll get caught in a bidding war. I don't have the impulse control. I'm just and I've won auctions before so low using Gixin that people would then refuse to sell it to me.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't. I am the guy who just makes my bid immediately and looks away and never looks at it again until I win. That's
See, the problem is someone will just come in there and outbid you by a quarter.
Yeah, that's
and
fine. Then they can have
it. They get it, and
That's fine.
I'm the guy that goes in there and puts in incremental bids in 25-cent increments to get exactly to someone else's. I'm that guy. All right, I'll admit it.
I'm the guy who looks at what the shipping cost is, thinks about what the maximum I want to pay is, subtracts the shipping cost from it, puts that in as a bid, and if it doesn't win, I just ignore it. I'm done.
I think the issue here is that the average buyer is just casually browsing the used market when they have time.
Right.
You know, it's like, hey, I want that copy of whatever. I'm going to go on the eBay. Oh, it's expensive. I'll check again in a month. Hardcore collectors are methodical and thorough, and it is hard to beat them with random internet searches.
Yeah, they're the ones looking for the misspellings and
which is And so to play devil's advocate here, every time a game sells for some stupid price, it has the effect of weeding out many, many, many more copies of that game out of storage lockers, closets, attics, anybody who has that old game sitting around and they go, oh, that's worth something?
Yeah.
And that is a net positive in the market.
Yeah.
And so on a long enough timeline, obviously, when every copy of something someone is willing to part with has hit the market, this sort of breaks down.
Right.
But
I don't expect that anytime soon. Not in our lifetime.
It's a long time away. Right.
And you know that one of my coworkers, he had a whole box full of NES and Genesis games from back in the day that his wife wanted him to get rid of. He was ready to throw them in the trash. And I mentioned, no, that stuff's worth something. It's like, no, it's not. I was like, I will buy it from you. He's like, it's not worth anything. And then I sent him the article about that dumb bullshit WATA graded Super Mario Brothers that sold. And he was like, what? Is this game worth $100? No, it's not worth that. Okay, look, I sent you the wrong article.
Now, I'll say this. Every time that happens, you get that person that then goes and lists it for whatever the WATA sealed version sold for. But then you also get a lot of people that go, hey, I have a copy that is that worth something? And then someone else goes, well, that one sold for this much because of these reasons. Right. But your version is still worth $50 or whatever. And they go, oh, cool. Well, I'll go sell it for $50.
He's just going to bring me the box and tell me to just give him a dollar amount. And I was like, all right, I can do that.
I also want to point out that if you buy physical games for any reason, then you're a collector.
I know.
For the most part, there's no reason to buy physical games with the existence of emulation. So whether you buy them to play them or put them in an acrylic case and look at them, you're a collector.
And even for people who absolutely need original hardware, which I am not one of those people, but they exist. There are people who prefer playing on original hardware for one reason or another.
True.
And if you do, you can get a flash cart.
Yeah.
They're pretty affordable.
Great.
Yeah.
So, like, unless you're one of those people that's just, I just need to have original. That's what I love. That's wonderful. That's great.
If you're chasing the nostalgia of it, that's fine. I get that.
Or maybe you're a speedrunner. Maybe you have insurmountable muscle memory. Maybe you're after a title that just doesn't emulate well and doesn't work on flashcards. There's some of them. Yeah. There's a few out there.
Right.
You're a collector.
Yeah.
You know, and the chances are that if you're listening to this show, you collect games in some fashion.
Or maybe you could collect Pogs.
And maybe you collect Pogs. Because the thing is, collectors collect because they love something.
Yeah.
And even if they love it in a different way than you, hey, I want to get this sealed copy of Earthbound and never open it because it's awesome to own a sealed copy of Earthbound. You know, don't get mad at that person. They're enjoying it in a way that they love. And whether they're playing it or not, they're buying it either way. So what is, you know what I mean? like if every time an NES shows up on Pawn Stars, 1,000 more get dug out of storage containers and flood on the market. Because let me tell you, I went on eBay the day after that WATA sale to check Super Mario 64 prices, and there was a fucking shitload of new listings.
I gotta say, if somebody really wants a copy of Earthbound, I've got one. If you wanna trade me a car for it, because I hear that's what it's worth these days.
I don't know, Saturn. I've bought cars for a few $100s before. Don't say that, because someone will come up with a car.
I didn't say any car.
Oh, I see. I see. So I just wanted to point out that if you're a collector, because we I feel like I'm guilty of sometimes getting salty in the chat of you don't need original hardware, just emulate the shit.
Right.
If you're here and you're collecting, I'm excited to have you here. Now I'm going to point out at every turn. I'm going to point out at every turn that hey, for $0, there are options that actually may even play better.
True.
But if you're chasing your passion and you're doing what you love, then do that and try not to shit on it when other people are loving it in a way that is maybe slightly different than you.
Or more affordable.
Unless they are an investor.
Well, you can also shit on them if they're an asshole.
Well, yeah, or if they're an asshole, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. Because the newest of the three categories is investors.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this before, but lots of people... It's
basically the crypto bros of video games.
Yeah, people are looking to park money.
Uh-huh.
We aren't financially minded peoples. I think our bank accounts attest to that. But this is a real thing that happens, and collectible markets are hot right now.
They still let you have a bank account?
Yeah, I know. It's at Wachovia. I can't. They're closed all the time, though.
That's right next to the Washington Mutual, where I've got mine.
Oh, fuck. A lot of people are literally just looking to put money somewhere.
Yeah. Yep.
And grading goes hand in hand with investing. And here's why. Mm-hmm. When your item is graded, it means the condition of that item will not change after purchase or sale.
Right.
And then you sell it at auction, and that, in air quotes, sets the bottom price for that item.
Yeah.
Because the next time it sells at auction, it's not going to sell for less. Because a copy with the same grade is theoretically, worth at least that much.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, it can. It's possible.
Things do drop in price.
Usually, you're on an upward trend, even if there's dips.
Right.
And whenever you have a graded item that has set a price at auction, suddenly other investor types are willing to buy and sell based on that bottom line, because now there is a bottom line that theoretically shouldn't dramatically change and should theoretically trend upward, because this item is in the condition it's in. It is sealed in this little acrylic case. It is not changing condition. So since they're not making this anymore, this commodity is going to get more and more hard to find, period.
Right. However, keep in mind that external market conditions can still affect these things, because just the economic downturn that we've had over the last few months is greatly affecting game prices. A lot of people were acting as if this was the magic investment that would never drop in price. I can tell you, if I look at my price charting right now that I put all my games in, it's dropped about just over 10% since May.
Right.
So the value of these things are starting to dip a little bit. I'm not going to say that we've burst a bubble. I don't think that's going to happen just yet, but things can still trend down a little.
Sure. And I think that's what it is. It's a dip. Talk to me in 5 years,
right.
And that's the thing. Anyone who's actually investing in anything will tell you is, since May, in the last 2 years, talk to me in a decade.
Right.
I wish I could say that I think investing in retro games will go away, but even the WATA Games scandal did nothing to put a dent in it.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
It's still, WATA Games is still operating.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
And they also have many competitors that also grade games now.
Yes. I'll tell you this.
Uh-huh.
If you want to invest in retro gaming, I can think of an upside.
Yeah.
And the only upside to investors that I can come up with is that, like collectors, having super high profile sales means they usually get covered by national news outlets.
True.
And that vacuums copies sitting in boxes and storage boxes and everything all over the country from people wanting to sell their thing. And again, yes, many of them know what they have, but many of the rest of them just go, oh, people want this thing? Cool. All right, yeah, I know mine's not sealed and it's not a 10 out of 10 out of whatever this company is, but, we give me $50 for it.
Yeah, and also, if we're looking at the very long picture, the very long-term picture, when we want to think about preservation of our hobby and our passion and these things, a lot of the stuff that's just in people's hands, no matter how good a care they take of it, is eventually going to fall apart due to oils and due to just air and moisture in the air. And
especially if you're the type like me that buys your stuff to play it. I mean, I mostly do emulation these days, but well, I gotta go.
Yeah,
it's we're like me, like I do mostly emulation these days, but all the retro stuff I bought to play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
To put it in my system and play it, and that's not what I should be doing if I want it to be here in 20 years.
And so, for those people who are grading things and getting it acrylically sealed or whatever, those copies are going to be preserved in such a way that it won't just be a digital scan in 50 years or 100 years. And if this hobby does continue to have passionate fans, and there are more museum-like institutions in the future, like we're starting to see now, that stuff is going to be what they want. It's going to be those ones that were preserved in that way, not the ones that, have somebody's little brother's, mouth print on the instruction manual. I mean, maybe that's
mean to me.
Well, look, you shouldn't have eaten that manual. But
well, it was delicious.
I get that that's the stuff we're nostalgic for, because we enjoy the ones with the Blockbuster sticker on it because it makes us think about that bygone era. But when we're looking at something that we want to preserve in a museum, we want that pristine copy that has been sealed in acrylic.
Yeah. Of course, the most insidious part here with investors is that investors, while it does have the knock-on effect of eventually in 20, 30 years, there will still be pristine copies of these games, which is great.
Yeah.
They also do their very best to manipulate prices wholesale, and a lot of them have the means to actually achieve it.
Like buying all the copies of Silent Service.
Like buying all the copies of Silent Service.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things where do I think investors, collectors, and scalpers are problematic?
Yeah.
Yes, of course they're problematic. Right. But I do think that they don't necessarily deserve the extreme hatred and vitriol that gets pointed at them a lot of the time.
That's fair.
Well, maybe investors often do.
Okay.
And the corporations do.
And but also the guys that run the show Pawn Stars.
Then the guys that run show Spawn. But the guys that are collecting stuff, the guys that are flipping stuff, the guys that are buying sealed copies and putting them in those little plastic little box protector things.
Yeah.
Have
you bought anything from LRG in the last year or so?
I've bought the only thing I've ever bought from LRG was the PS2 HDMI upscaler ever.
Okay. So when you buy any game from them, in the shopping cart as you're checking out is a little checkbox that is like, do you want to add an acrylic box for your game?
Yeah.
And every time I'm like, no, shut up, LRG.
I'm not saying, hey, if you're hating on scalpers, you're a bad person or whatever.
Right.
I'm just saying that let's try to keep perspective here. And let's recognize that a lot of people are entering this hobby from a lot of different vectors.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day, if the effect is a lot of this stuff stays around for a lot longer than it would have otherwise, then despite the fact that it might make it harder for you to buy it now, it's not all bad.
Right.
That said, let's talk about completely avoiding this altogether.
Yeah. Emulation.
Because it's easy. Yeah. So first of all, like I said in the beginning of the show, please remember that the majority of these games, especially stuff like first-party games from Sony or Nintendo, were largely published into oblivion.
Right. And a lot of it is also still available today through their digital download services.
Yeah, they printed insane amounts of most of these titles. They are not rare commodities.
Right.
They won't run out for a very long time, and there are still deals to be had.
Yes.
Obviously, emulate. Please emulate. Yeah. Emulation is great. Yeah. I regularly in the Discord talk to people that say things like, oh yeah, I tried emulation like a few years ago and it wasn't fantastic. Emulation is not static.
No.
It has continued to grow. It has continued to get better. And depending on what you're emulating, there are still problem systems, problem games, problem emulators. Yeah. Depending on what you're emulating, man, it's great. I mean, for our episode last week or 2 weeks ago, the PSP Hidden Gems episode, I owned the majority of those games that I talked about on that episode, and I still played them on PPSSPP because it's just so good.
And also fun to say.
Yeah. I do want to talk about perspective here. The majority of games on major consoles are still relatively affordable, and I maintain this.
Yeah, unless you were shopping for PS Vita.
Yeah. If you keep from fixating on the insanely priced games, there are still many, many great titles to be enjoyed.
Absolutely.
And I want to start with some numbers. I looked up data, and this is my own research, so please understand that I don't like numbers. They don't like me, so my numbers are going to be a little weird.
He's never learned math.
I just went on price charting. I sorted by price, high to low, and I started counting. Going by complete inbox prices for PlayStation 1, there's about 96 titles with a price over $100. Oof. Price charting lists 1,800 PS1 games.
That's about right, yeah.
So that's like 1,700 PS1 games that are less than a $100 bill. And a lot of those are less than a $50 bill.
Yeah.
Now, are they all amazing? No. But
there are some good ones.
That's a shitload of games.
Yes.
That you have at your disposal for still relatively affordable prices. The NES has a little over 100 games.
Yeah.
With a price over $100 on price charting, excluding like homebrew and super bizarre titles. There's 1,100 games listed.
Yeah.
That's a shitload of games. There are 872 games listed at less than $20 loose for the SNES. That's almost 1,000 games for less than a $20 bill.
Yeah.
There are nearly 1,000 Genesis games listed on price charting for less than $20 loose.
Remember when Genesis was the dirt cheap system? Man, I miss those days.
If you want to talk Game Gear, it's basically all cheap.
Yeah.
You know, obviously these numbers include things like variants, reprints, weird stuff. But my point is that there's obscene amounts of relatively affordable retro games still out there. And not all of them are sports games.
True, yeah.
Like Earthbound is great, but so is Illusion of Gaia, and it's less than $30.
Man, that's a great game.
Metal Warriors is awesome, but so is Cybernator, and it's $31.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, if you only want to play the JRPGs on Super Nintendo, they ain't cheap.
No.
But the Super Nintendo had a shitload of really awesome games that are still pretty affordable.
Also, it had some really good JRPGs that are cheap still, just because nobody knows about them. Nobody's
like
looking for
Tecmo's Legend of the Hidden Stars.
Okay, nobody wants to play Tecmo's Secret of the Stars, first of all.
Secret of the Stars, pardon me.
But there are games like Paladin's Quest that are relatively cheap and out there, and nobody's looking for them.
And the thing is, the really high-profile, expensive titles, a lot of those have been re-released elsewhere on virtual consoles and remasters and collections because those are the games people are demanding because they can't afford them. If you have a Sega Saturn, please don't go buy Radiant Silvergun for it. Please don't. But go buy Virtual On. Go buy Super Bomberman.
Don't buy Super Bomberman on Saturn. That's way too many money.
What? No, the Japanese one.
Oh,
the Japanese one. It's like $10, you know. So there are still a lot of really great games. And the really high-profile, expensive stuff, a huge portion of it is in a collection. It's emulated somewhere. It's on this. It's been remastered, you know.
And if it's not, you can emulate it.
Like, there are not a lot of PS1 JRPGs that are not available elsewhere that are pretty high profile, but there's a shitload of cheap ones that you probably never heard of that you could have a lot of fun with.
The last super big, super expensive PS1 JRPG is about to finally get re-released. So, you know.
Yeah. So, I think, you know, and I've noticed this in the last 20 years since retro gaming has really codified into, like, in air quotes, a community, which is to say one big zeitgeist, is that for any given system, it seems like only 10% of that system's library is even talked about.
Yeah, it's true. And that's that's the case for not just games, but for all media. Anytime somebody's like, "Oh, music was so much better in the 70s or 80s or 90s," they're only talking about that top 10%. They're ignoring all the dumb bullshit that played on the radio all the time.
I've heard people talk about how movies used to be better in the 80s. Buddy, go get a VHS tape from the 80s and watch the trailers and tell me you recognize one fucking film from those.
Yeah.
Even one.
Right.
And so it's this thing where, like, nobody's talking about Low G Man. but it's a fun game.
Is it?
Yes, Saturn, it's a fun fucking game. No one's talking about Trog, and it's a blast.
Yeah, Trog is pretty fun. Yeah, I'll give you Trog.
Nobody's talking about this stuff, but it's fun, and it's out there, and it's cheap, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like the only stuff that gets talked about is the trash garbage that's so bad that we want to laugh at it.
True.
And the stuff that's so insanely popular that it's already fucking available everywhere.
And one of those is Castlevania, too. And you and I disagree on which of those it is.
We both categorize that in one of those categories. So we agree on that at least.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, it's one of those things where explore some system libraries.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, get out there, play some different stuff, buy some cheapo stuff. You know, if you've heard about it, it's probably already somewhere else. You know, go play Cybernator. It's a fucking blast. I got it for like $2 because I didn't know what it was. There was a robot on the front of it. You know.
I love the idea of your qualification for buying a game. It's like, oh, that one has a robot on it.
Well, to be, you know, granted, it's $30 now, but back when I bought it, you know, again, the early aughts when you could walk in and buy a big sack of games, the criteria for what you bought was very low. It was just like, that one's got a dragon on it, that one's got a robot on it, that one's red. So just the whole cartridge is red, so I gotta have that.
Oh, so that's how you got Maximum Carnage.
This, yes.
Yeah, see,
I love Maximum Carnage.
I never went with that qualification because I was that guy reading magazines since the 80s. So I was always going based on what I had heard was good. But I also bought all the stuff so long ago that it wasn't this prices yet.
Yeah. So just I guess what I'm saying here is yeah, the collectors, investors, flippers, they're problematic, but also there's a huge wide ocean of retro gaming out there that is affordable, available in its original form. It's out there. You can go buy it right now. It's not crazy expensive, and everyone's just up here on the shore bitching about Earthbound.
Yeah, and you don't have to, even if you want original hardware, or even if you want to rather play hardware on your television, you don't have to go out and get that original system. And if you do, you can get one that's, you know, kind of gummed up or dirty and clean it up, and I bet it'll work fine. Or you can get a clone console, you can get a Retron, you can get all kinds of stuff, and then just get some cheap cartridges to plug in it. So there are definitely more affordable options for a lot of these older systems.
And let me tell you, if you're looking for the authentic experience, the authentic experience for any console library is I own these 5 or 6 really great games and then like 50 garbage games that we filter through every once in a while when we get bored. That's the real experience.
Yeah, if you want to relive the late 80s and early 90s in an emulator, just pick one game every weekend, play it for 3 hours, get upset that you can't play a different game, and wait for the next week. That's your experience.
Yes. And so I feel like it's just like how you talk about how everyone wants to go all on about authenticity.
Right.
Talking about their PVMs and BVMs and other professional monitors, and you're like, most of us played on garbage via RF. Like, this is not authentic.
I spent at least a year playing NES on a black and white television.
I remember we were recording this show when I stopped using RF for my NES, SNES, and N64. Yeah. And I mean, at the same time, I had the big dangle of 3 of them.
Well, that's how you do it.
And whenever you went to play system, you had to reach back there and slap it around a few times to get a clear enough picture to play your game.
When I finally stopped using RF, I had the dangle, which was PS1 connected to Sega Saturn, connected to Genesis, connected to N64, connected to PC or TurboGrafx, connected to Super NES, connected to NES, connected to our cable box. And we could still see the cable box, kind of.
As far as final thoughts, my point is this. It's great that the retro gaming space is so codified because we can have different types of discussions because a lot of us agree on a lot of things.
True.
But having it so codified also means that a vast ocean of experiences and portions of this hobby are largely ignored by people who are just playing Final Fantasy VI again.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with playing Final Fantasy VI.
Good, because I'm going to do
game, but go play some Illusion of Gaia.
Yeah,
go play whatever the heck game Saturn said. I forgot. Paladin's Quest.
You know? Lagoon is another one that's cheap on Super NES.
Go play some different stuff out there.
Yeah.
You know, explore these libraries. Really spend some time with them.
Go find Destiny of an Emperor on NES. Is that one expensive now? I hope it's not
I don't even know anymore. I was shocked that Cybernator was $31. I was like, you fucking kidding me? Nobody wanted Cybernator.
Right. It looks like Destiny of an Emperor is about $35, which is a little pricey for an NES game, but it is a JRPG, and it's a good one.
Well, you know what else is a good one, Saturn? It's our Patreon.
What?
Over at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, where you can get uncut versions of this show where we talk about really dark shit. Really just awful dark shit.
Sometimes you have to talk about death. Sometimes these things happen.
You can also get Talking Wizards. You can get, we have other things. I don't remember it all. There's
Read along
stuff there. Read along. You can get Read Along. I'm excited for recording that show. That was a blast.
Yeah, it's fun.
That was a good,
next weekend, weekend. We're going to do another read along.
Yes. Cannot wait. And if you want to hang out with us live while we do read along, I will say this. I want to say this about the Patreon. It will not hurt our feelings if you subscribe at the read along tier. Enjoy it for a couple months, listen to all the old episodes of After Hours, and then drop your pledge or drop it to $1 or whatever. Like, I feel like a lot of people feel bad being like, hey, I just wanted to give you money for a couple months. That's fine.
Right.
We're not upset. We understand. In fact, when you cancel a pledge, one of the options in the drop-down box that you select that I always read for our canceled pledges says, I only plan to give a set amount.
Yeah.
And that's all fine. So just so people are aware, you know. But we do want to thank the following patrons for their kind donations, starting with Michael Winters
and Alex,
Austin Wheeler,
Blaster Keaton,
Jordan Eash,
Brian Kim,
Nicholas Perfect,
Andrew Skalf,
Christopher Britt,
and Luke Saracen Clark.
Are all the patrons we want to thank for their very kind donations that they make to this show with their dollars on the Patreon website monthly.
Yes.
So yeah. You know, that's basically all of investing. So we are not licensed financial advisors. If you have any real financial questions, please seek out the help of licensed financial advisor. This is entertainment purposes only, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you have any complaints, please direct them to our producer, Guy.
Yeah. Neither of us can do math. Please do not ask us to do math. Do not expect us to know what math is.
I told my wife the other day I can't do math, which I've told her before, and she goes, so what do you mean when you say that? Like algebra? And I go, no, fractions.
See, I was really good at math in school. I'm just joking. I can actually do math.
I like that you waited until I confided in you. And you're like, no, I'm just fucking with you. I'm great at math. You're dumb.
I was pretty good at calculus, yeah. But...
Anyway, that's all we got. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.